Hey, what's going on, guys? Dylan from Flight Performance and Fitness. So today I'm going to give you my 4 go-to strength and mobility exercises. So a lot of times when people talk about restrictions in the hip or they feel like they have tight hips, a lot of times it's just a weakness problem and not being exposed to strength in different positions. So these are going to be 4 exercises that are going to help you improve on your mobility, but also strengthen up in end range positions and also just get you into positions that you're probably not into a lot of times with most normal strength exercises or everyday life. So this is going to be an exercise I really like. It's going to be a curtsy lunge into a lateral hip lock. So one thing about this is, a lot of people do hinging exercises, squatting variations, but very rarely do we get ourselves to get into actual adduction and actual abduction of our hip. So even with lateral lunge variations, we're really not getting into too much range there as far as this hip closing up, our pelvis moving to the side. So this is going to be a variation that's going to get deep into those tissues and make you move through a good range of motion. And you can work with a slow tempo on this and just kind of work on trying to get the range, or we can try to be a little more explosive to make it more dynamic, more athletic. All right, so start off, you can use a bar. You can also use the wall or a rack. I think a bar is really nice, just be able to have something to hold here. Keeping this leg rooted, I'm gonna let my body come over here, let my torso come over, and I'm gonna reach this leg out as far as I can. So I'm getting into this hip as deep as I can. The more I squat, the harder it's gonna be, but I'm trying to not let my knee come out too far and not let my hips rotate. So I'm trying to stay pretty square here, get as far as I can, and then I'm gonna push out hard and drive my pelvis into the bar. So here I'm trying to push the ground away from me, get this glute firing, really lock this hip out here, and then I'm gonna come right back into a rep, driving through. Trying to let my torso come with me, reach, and then pushing through. And this is just a position that, if you give this a try, you're gonna feel probably muscles you probably haven't felt, because I'm getting really deep into that internal rotation and adduction of that hip. So strengthening in different positions that you're not really normally into, generally gonna feel really good on the hips. Next one is gonna be a single leg Nordic hip flexion here. So a lot of people struggle with hip flexion when they're doing athletic stuff. A lot of people just feel tight in the anterior hip, and a lot of that is going to be due to just weakness as far as our hip flexion goes. But a lot of conventional hip flexion exercises are in this, going from just that front of the range, so just doing the concentric part of this and not really working that end range hip flexion, okay, where our leg is actually behind our body, we're in hip extension and trying to hip flex from that position. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do here. We're gonna hug our knee, get into a good position with your spine, we'll lean back here. I'm trying to get as much of a stretch through my quad and hip flexors as I can without losing spine position. So I wanna keep this knee tight to my body. I'm gonna come back here. So if too much of my lower back is on the bench, it's gonna be a lot easier. So if I wanna get my butt to the end here to make it harder, and that's gonna make it a little bit more difficult as far as actually holding it just from this hip flexor. And same, just like that other one, I can go really slow and just kind of work on feeling that stretch and then squeezing, or I can be a little bit more dynamic, especially with that concentric portion, really trying to pull myself up. Okay, so next one's just gonna be a kickstand RDL. We've gone over this exercise a lot in different videos, different drills. I think we have it in our exercise library, but either way, the point of this exercise is really getting into deep hip flexion and extension. And then I'm trying to really get internal rotation on that side. So it's gonna be a good exercise for just getting into those deep tissues of the glutes and just moving through range with some strength. So I'm gonna keep those hips turned into that front leg slightly, making sure I'm keeping a slight knee bend the whole time so I have equal foot pressure. My spine position stays pretty long here. Controlling both positions. So in this bottom position is where we're really gonna get the stretch in those tissues, and I can kind of breathe into this and then push up slow and try to create tension. And I'm just gonna get better and better getting into that hip a little bit deeper, getting some internal rotation, and also just activating fibers and working on, the part that people really mess up a lot of times is gonna be this extension. So they'll kind of straighten out their knee and just come up tall like this. What I really want is this delayed knee extension. I wanna keep this knee pretty in the bend the whole time and work on just actually getting that extension from my glute here and using the ground to drive that extension. It'll make a big difference. All right, the next one's gonna be a hip airplane. This is another one that people's probably seen, but I'm gonna really talk about the details here. This is good for just working active rotation here. So I'm gonna be getting to that external rotation and internal rotation of that hip. So the thing that people usually jack up is that they're rotating way too far and not keeping the tension from the foot, not getting the movement from the ground. The other thing is they'll kind of move side to side as they do it. We really want our hips to be moving just up and down essentially. So I'll show you what I mean here. So we're gonna get into this deep hip hinge. I'm using this just for balance. I don't want to go anywhere side to side. I want this hip to go straight down. I'm going to feel that the tissues on my right hip stretching now, and then I'm pushing from the ground. I'm going to drive that hip straight up and try to get as far as I can without this foot moving. My knees should stay stacked right over my foot here. I'm locking in, so you can see I'm working really hard with that foot not to lose my position, not to lose my rooting, and then I'm going again straight down. Knees locked in right over my foot, pushing through the ground, driving straight up. And you're going to feel a lot of glute here both ways. As I dip in here, I should feel a little adductor working as well. But, you know, this is going to be a great prep exercise. 5 to 6, 5 to 8 reps, really slow, moving through both ways. And your hips are going to feel a lot better going into any kind of exercise we're doing after.